everybody, it's Colby here with PrizeCast, and we have a new episode of Screentime for you today. It's a very special episode. We have a guest, Tobias Kallenberg. I'm really excited to have him on. Hey Tobias, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Colby. How are you doing?
Fantastic. I can't complain too much. So today we're doing a very special episode of Screentime. We're doing an anime edition, specifically covering why people should watch anime, why they should give it a chance. You know, a lot of Americans either think it's a cartoon for kids and they don't really understand what anime is. So we're here to convince them they need to give it a shot. And I guess my first question is, I wanted to ask you, what got you into anime? How did you find out about it? What was your introduction to it?
Until my freshman year of high school, so about like 5 years ago at this point, I had a pretty strong aversion to the genre. But then in high school, just so many different people started telling me about these different shows and why I should watch them. And I'll also get into this particular one later. But my first show was Attack on Titan, which introduced me to a lot of themes in the genre, which I wasn't familiar were present in most anime. And then I basically kind of kept on watching these different shows, and then before you knew it, I was just kind of accepting of the genre.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so for me, it was actually much earlier. I was about 7 years old, and I got introduced to a little-known anime called Dragon Ball. And it was, to me, I didn't realize what it was. To me, it was just a cartoon, and I thought it was cool, but I knew it was very different from everything. And then so of course I grew up with Cartoon Network and Toonami, and so that was pretty much my childhood. And so it's been a big part of my life growing up, but I'm glad that I was able to get introduced to it early. So it's great that we have two different perspectives coming in from it. Like, you avoided it most of your life, and then I found it early. So I think it's going to be interesting whenever we get into the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, your introduction to the genre, Dragon Ball, is kind of the extent of a lot of people's knowledge of the genre, and so it'll be good to kind of go into like how that's not really the only genre present in anime.
Absolutely. And so I guess the first thing we really need to cover and to break down for people is what anime is. You know, like I said, a lot of people think that it's just cartoons, it's just for kids. You know, I think if you mention anime to most Americans, they're immediately going to go to Pokemon. That's pretty much what they're going to think is, oh, it's that crazy kid stuff. But what anime actually is a Japanese branded form of storytelling that's just told through animation. It has nothing to do with specifically being targeted towards kids or adults. It's a format, just like movies and TV live action. It's just a format that happens to utilize animation. And so I think that it's something that a lot of people just don't understand.
Yeah, and a lot of people, I think that like what you were saying earlier about a format is a lot of people think of anime more as a genre in this country and instead of a format. But I mean, of course, as we're going to get into, it's something where every genre is represented.
And one thing that I think that was really interesting to me about anime is that I learned later on that a lot of major studios in the United States control most of the film and television production here, which is, it's standard, it's how it's worked. But in Japan, there aren't really any major anime studios. Of course, there's big ones, but there's so many of them that there's no big four like we have in the United States with Disney and Warner and such. Like, there's really a lot more competition in Japan, and I think that's really, really important and says a lot about why there's so many different styles of anime, especially like experimental, like artistic anime.
Basically, whenever most Americans consider anime, they consider the shonen genre, which is basically your Dragon Balls, your One Pieces, even to a certain degree your Pokemons, which is mostly kind of your basic hero's journey story featuring multiple fights, a main character, good versus evil, just very, very, very basic stuff. And that's because that's the vast majority that's actually distributed on American networks. And so it's pretty clear why most people would think that. But of course, like once you look into it, you will find that it's an extremely diverse genre, and that's just it. It's a form of storytelling. It's not just something that's used to tell like a single type of story.
That's exactly the reason why I think people should give anime a shot. It's a diverse form of storytelling that offers so many different things that you can't get with live action in a different way. I mean, like for example, one of my favorite filmmakers, Hayao Miyazaki. His films are absolutely incredible. I mean, they range from for kids all the way to for adults. Specifically, like children shouldn't watch some of these films, not
Oh,
because
absolutely not.
but I mean, but he's an Oscar-nominated filmmaker. Spirited Away won the Oscar for Best Animated Film, and it was well deserved. But if you look at the animation, how beautiful it is! Not just that, it's the storytelling that in these films as well. But there's the way that the stories are told are in ways that couldn't be done in live action. Like Spirited Away in live action just wouldn't work. There's a film that he did back in 2014, I believe, or 2013, and it's The Wind Rises, and it's an animated film, but it's a real story, and it's about the creator of the kamikaze plane in World War II, and how he didn't want it to be used for violence, and his struggles with that, and his history in Japan. And it's a very beautiful film, but there are dream sequences in the film that just couldn't be told in live action the same way, even if you had great visual effects. It's a form of storytelling that allows the creator a very different palette that I think is very important.
Yeah, I think that that's a very big that's certainly one of the very big things. I mean, whenever you're just considering animation in general, or for me, I read a lot of graphic novels. When you're looking at these different forms of storytelling, you like one has to consider like what can and cannot be done in live action, or indeed the limitations of it. And you will see a lot of anime that are within the scope of live action adapted to live action, but of course a lot of it absolutely cannot.
Well, I completely agree, and anime is just plain fun. I think people should really, know that it's just plain fun. It's great storytelling, very emotional stuff. So, but getting down into the details of it, some people might be averse to anime because they think they have to understand Japanese, or at least they might have to read subtitles.
Well, I think it certainly depends from show to show, but I think the vast majority of the time, I think it's important that you need to kind of push past an aversion to subtitles. And of course, that applies not just to anime, that applies to all foreign language film in general. If you enjoy, I think that basically the art is in and of itself in Japanese. You're just reading, like the fact that you're reading subtitles, it doesn't change it. It just means that you're just understanding what they're saying. And I mean, basically with a lot of these shows, before you know it, you'll just be like reading the subtitles and it'll just be part of the show to you. I mean, just like, once again, same thing with foreign language film, same thing with any piece of media in a different language. Just like the further you get into it and the almost more practice that you get with reading these subtitles, the more you will be able to enjoy the medium through this tool that has been provided to us so that we can enjoy it in our native language.
So I guess now I think it's time for us to jump into anime that we would recommend people watch if they're just getting started and want to try it out. And I'm going to let you go first with that.
Okay, so the one that I'm actually going to start with is a show called Cowboy Bebop.
I think it's time to blow this scene.
And I'm about to contradict what I was saying earlier. But this show, I think it's a fantastic introduction to anime because first off, it's just great cinema. Like you will like the Cowboy Bebop like shows you this very, very realistic, gritty, believable sci-fi world of kind of humanity in the near-ish future, 100, 200 years in the future, where we've kind of colonized the solar system. And one reason why I think that this is a great intro is because of its great English dub. Oftentimes you will find in anime that the English dubs will sound weird or sound mediocre, or oftentimes they don't have a very large diversity of voice actors. So you can very much tell the old characters are being played by a young person doing a gruff voice or something like that. That's certainly not the case with Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop has a fantastic English dub that allows you to enjoy it in a lot of people will tell you the same capacity as the Japanese version because of these fantastic performances by each of the voice actors involved. But I just think that one thing that you'll just find with Cowboy Bebop is it's a great example of just something that, I mean, that you might see that might have been a live action movie. But, you know, it's just instead it's in this medium of storytelling. So I think that it's a fantastic entry to the genre. It wasn't my entry to the genre. I discovered it a bit down the line, but I think it would be a great intro for anyone who's looking to get into anime.
So Cowboy Bebop, and I'm gonna go with my first recommendation, which I mentioned earlier, which was The Wind Rises. It's a feature film, came out in 2013, directed by Hayao Miyazaki, and written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. It's an absolutely beautiful film. It was nominated for Best Foreign Film or Best Animated Film at the Oscars. But it's a beautiful film about a real person, a real story, just told through animation, and it's done in a way that I think really is unique and it stands out, and I think people will really, really appreciate it. And it's, like I said, it's just a feature film. It's just maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that could be a great introduction for people who don't necessarily want to sit down for 20 or 30 episodes of a series. Just so I think that would be something really good for people to try. Do you have anything else?
Okay, so now I'm going to go with my second recommendation. Now, this was my personal introduction into the genre, and that's Attack on Titan. Now, before I get into this, I will say that this show is very brutal. It features a lot of violence and a lot of very extreme moments. But I think that that's another reason why it's great for people to be introduced to the genre. Because as we were saying earlier, whenever most people think about anime, they think about the common tropes that you will see in shonen anime. And in Attack on Titan, you do have battles, you do have like a hero, and you do have like things like special powers. But then again, you also have a very personal, a very serious, and a very political story being told. And I think that that's why it's a great introduction to the very mature themes of the genre. And for this one, I would definitely recommend 100% watch it in Japanese. Of course, since it was my intro to the genre, I at first tried watching it in English, and I kind of felt off to me, so I switched to Japanese, and it provides a much more genuine and authentic experience of the show.
I guess my last anime that I'm going to recommend is Trigun, and
yes,
Trigun is another one of my favorites. It takes place a few hundred years in the future, and it's a space western on another planet. And it's got humor, it's got action, it's got everything you want. It's got incredible drama, especially towards the end of I think it's like 24, 25 episodes in total. It's really short, and so it's absolutely incredible, and you don't realize the emotional journey you're on until the very end. And I think that it's absolutely wonderful. It's about a man who is the lead character. His name is Vash, and he is on the run from pretty much everyone, because he's a wanted man for something that he might not have actually done. And I really don't want to give too much away, but it's an incredible story. Like I said, it's hilarious, but it's also has some of the best drama I've ever seen, especially towards the end. And I just want to say that people should definitely give it a shot.
I would definitely agree. I myself have seen the show, and it's a fantastic show.
Awesome. Well, I don't really know if I have any more to recommend right now, but I think that that's a good start for people to really kind of jump in and see the range of anime, especially for people just wanting to try it out and see if it's worth a shot. But thank you so much, Tobias, for jumping on with me and talking about this wacky Japanese animated stuff with me. And I think that people should definitely give it a shot. Do you have anything else you want to say to people, just to remind them or to let them know? I'm going to say that one more time. Do you have anything? Do you have anything that you'd want to let people know before we go?
I would say just go in with an open mind. it's like, once again, it's something that a lot of people aren't used to, because in the United States we have overwhelmingly used animation as a medium for children's content, but that's just not the case in Japan, since the beginning of the genre as a whole. And so I just think it's important to go in with an open mind and just understand, despite the medium, that the kind of story that you're going to get is probably not going to be the one that you're subconsciously expecting based on the animation that you have seen for most of your life.
Well, that's perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. So I guess the last thing we need to go out with is, where can people find this anime to watch? I have a few recommendations. I know that something that's accessible for a lot of people is Netflix. Netflix has a ton of anime now, and they're constantly adding more. And so you can go there, you can look it up under genre and find anime to watch. You can also go to Amazon, but then there's also anime themed applications and channels such as Crunchyroll or Funimation, if you're definitely wanting to find some of the stuff that we've talked about. Tobias, do you have any recommendations?
I would I would say Netflix has a lot of great shows. If I'm not mistaken, you can find Death Note on Netflix, and so that's a great place to watch it. Hulu, another common one, has a very wide selection, including Cowboy Bebop. Also, I would have to say that there is there's almost this, you can almost call it an online network. It's called Verve, and Verve has a lot of content. Not all of it's anime, but Crunchyroll is on there, and a bunch of different sites are on there with a massively wide selection of shows. A lot of the content is behind a paywall, but the vast majority of it, which you can find on the Crunchyroll channel, is not. So it's a great way to watch a lot of great shows ad-free.
Thank you so much, Tobias, for being here. Thank you for chatting with me about this crazy, wacky Japanese form of animation. I love it, and so I'm so thankful that you're able to jump on with me and convince people to watch it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think that it's something that it really expanded my horizons. It opened me up to so many different stories that I would have never been exposed to if I hadn't seen. It's given me hours of enjoyment, and I would definitely recommend everyone get into it. Like, it's just, if you're complaining about not knowing what show to watch next, if you're introduced to this genre, you'll have just an infinite array of shows to get into.
Absolutely. There's always something to find, and I 100% agree with that, yeah. Well, thank you again for being here. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will see everyone on the next PrizeCast. So, bye, Tobias.